This morning we hear and just heard the story of Jesus as he is amongst the teachers and elders of the temple when he's 12 years old. With this story, we actually come to the conclusion of what we are told about Jesus' youth. Nothing else is known. And we really hear nothing of Jesus again until about 18 years later. There's an importance in that gap. Just as there is an importance essentially in the gap between the last time we'd actually seen Jesus in the scriptures when he was being presented for circumcision in the temple to this. We notice that the gospel writers are not attempting to create some new mythological God, new figure of a hero of some type, but that they're telling us a very human story. But it's a very human story about the birth of the Son of God. From the beginning of the Gospels, we're given that tension that continues throughout and continues to our lives. A tension between two things that seem not to be able to go together. How can you both be God and a human being? In this story, we get that tension in many different ways. But the tension started with the way Luke and the other gospel writers begin our presentation of who this Jesus is. It begins with Gabriel coming and announcing to Mary that God will be born of her. It's then reinforced when Mary goes to Elizabeth and John the Baptist leaps within her womb. And Elizabeth can proclaim that the presence of the Mother of God is with her. But all of this glory never takes our eyes off the fact that this Jesus is also very, very human. Because even then, in the womb, he's obviously about to be born as a human. He doesn't just descend, take on a body, and all of a sudden say, I think I'm going to start speaking to you. He doesn't kind of manifest like an angel and say, here I am, God amongst you, in a form that you can conceive of. And now I'll poof away like an angel might. No, he comes as that little baby. And so it is that we're first told that God will be born, and then what we see is not a God, but a baby. That little baby is going to need his mother. He's going to need to be nurtured by his mother. He's not going to be able to live without Mary. He's going to need the protection of Joseph. Herod wants to kill him. Joseph, as so often has been known as the holy protector from that point on, keeps the protection of Mary and Jesus and takes them off to Egypt. This is not a mythological hero who is able to have his enemies come at him and with the wave of his hand, they fly away. This is a baby needing protection, a baby needing nurturing. A helpless baby taken to the temple in obedience to Jewish law to be circumcised. And so there the other side of the tension comes, because we look at this and say, here's this little human baby. And just as we're kind of once getting that, he's proclaimed God again. For there Simeon and Anna come, and Simeon goes those words, Lord, now let your servant depart in peace, for my eyes have seen the Savior, God with us. So it is that we come to the conclusion of what we're told about the youth of Jesus. And in that brief period of time of telling us this, we are presented the confluence of his humanity and his divinity as they are made manifest to us. And it's at this point that Luke is going to shut the book on the life of Jesus until he comes once again out to begin his ministry. He shuts it with finding Jesus just as he's coming into the beginning of his maturity at 12 years old. A time when you'd be learning of the Torah and all of this, beginning to really learn the Torah, to really become a Jewish man, to take your place in the society of other men. He shows us then amongst the teachers, listening and beginning to learn from them. You can almost get the sense of where he is right now as he's beginning to grab hold of that learning. And you might notice this amongst other people about, for us at about 12 years old, all of a sudden, you start to get interested in things. On one level, we know this because today we can say, yeah, brain development hasn't developed completely yet until around that age and that point to actually get hold of what's known as abstract knowledge. And so all of a sudden there is it, that abstract things, getting concepts, and all of a sudden people start to get really interested at that age in these things. And so it is that Jesus is in that place. And so we go, a normal human boy who is now getting interested in these things. Isn't this great to see that? But then that confluence comes because everybody's amazed. But that this boy that just should be beginning to grab hold of concepts and beginning to learn the Torah and the ways of a Jewish man is so wise already. The questions he asks say this is already a part of him. And so as we end with meeting Jesus in the temple with a wisdom beyond his ages, but we also find that it says he's going to end up obedient to his parents and to his family. The two come together. And it's only when we grab hold of this, that's why it's so important. It's not just a history lesson. It's not just let us come to the history of Jesus Christ. It's the message of this. If you don't get this, you don't get the rest of the gospel. Because then we'll come to the rest of it. But if you haven't understood that this is a fully human boy that's growing up and God, how do you begin to understand what goes on in the rest? We too often, actually, read things again from our modern perspective, which is we like factual histories. And that's not how they did it back then. That's not even how they did it for a long time. It's kind of a post-Renaissance way of doing things, where everything is a factual history, rather than we're going to get a story. And you got to get this beginning of the story first. And that's what Luke especially gives to us. Do you realize, he says, that this God is also fully human? If you get it, read the rest of my gospel. If you get it, then read my other thing called the book of Acts. But if you don't get it, you're not going to get the rest. It's the mistake that's often made and said, oh, what a great teacher. It's even right here that Luke is going to say, if you want to think of Jesus as a great teacher, well, then he's 12. I mean, he was already going to be a great teacher about then. If it's all about Jesus' teaching and being a great teacher and just one of those folks, 12 years old did it, But he was already there at 12. No, we embrace the fullness of it. And in this embracing of it, we're also given then two principles. Two principles that really show us what's going on here, that are so important for our own spiritual lives. One is that we actually have to give ourselves the same grace that was seen in Jesus. It takes a while to grow up. It takes a while. Life is a process. We often impose things upon ourselves like, I should have it all together now. Well, now that you become a Christian, why aren't you acting like one? What does that even mean? It takes time. It's growth. It's process. Jesus grew. And that's how this portion of Scripture even says, and he continued to grow in wisdom. Jesus grew in wisdom, so do we. And so it is that we just don't give ourselves the excuse of saying, well, let me off the hook, I'm still growing. That's true. But we go, I don't know something. I need to continue to grow. Jesus grew and came into maturity. Our life, our spiritual life, as well as our physical life, is a progression, a growth. And so it is that we just continue to try and grow, to advance ourselves, to learn new things, to actually go into new depths, and not expect that we were already there, but now we have something to go towards. That makes life exciting. If we thought, once I'm there, that's it, that is a very dull, boring life. It's one of those images that really is much more hell than heaven, which is when I finally see God, that's it. And so we'll sit there and, in that sense, strum harps for eternity. I mean, most people don't even think that sounds fun for a few minutes. But if you thought, okay, we're going to do this for a week, and then a month, and then a year, and then 10,000 years, and you go, that's an image of hell. This is because you're stuck in the same place. And that is the image of hell that essentially Dante gives when he meets Lucifer, Satan, at the bottom of Inferno. Where is he? He's stuck up to his waist. From his waist up is all you see, in ice, frozen. Hell is cold and frozen. Nothing changes. Nothing progresses. It's just static, stagnant, deadly. Our life is a continual progression and growth throughout eternity. And that's exciting. The next thing to learn, the next thing to know, the next thing to experience. And God says, come and do this with me, and I will show you an eternity of these things. Satan says, come and find out your new experience with me, and I will lead you to the ice, where it finally just traps you. That's why God is always beckoning us into the new. And we get that image right here because Jesus grew and continued to grow. But that also shows us this type of other side, the other principle. The principle which is this, that Jesus in his own life was a confluence of divinity and humanity. And in that, showing us that we can never really just try and make things as black and white as we want. Even the growth we're talking about is, shouldn't I be there? Where's there? There is always moving. It's a sense of getting somewhere that you don't get. We often attempt to make other things in life black and white. While the truth is, life, that intersection. And we see this so clearly in the end of the story of Jesus with the teachers in the temple. For here we have God who is a beginning actually to teach his people. God has returned to his temple. We had seen that from Ezekiel. When you read Ezekiel, you see that because of disgust of what's going on, the Spirit of the Lord left the temple. And from that point on, people were saying, Lord, would you come back to your temple? It's seen, the Spirit of the Lord is seen leaving the temple in Ezekiel. And from that point on, it's bereft. And so we get the beginning of the return. What we looked at even in this last week, which is the circumcision of Jesus. And what Simeon said was, the Lord has returned to his temple in the circumcision. And now, these 12 years later, the Lord has returned to bring teaching to the temple. And so we have on one side, the Lord has returned to the temple. And here he is to be found. But he goes home obedient to his parents. Wait a minute, shouldn't he just stay and do this? Or why did he stay behind? Shouldn't he have been obedient to his parents? It's a tension that we find in life. And that tension is this: how do I grow and become my own person while also staying, in a sense, an obedient person? Isn't that the teenager's problem? Isn't that all adolescence? Isn't that, therefore, all of us who have never grown past adolescence, most of us? It's like that sense of being able to go, I need to grow and be my own person. Jesus, don't you know I should be about my Father's work, business? This is where you'd find me, doing the work that I've been called to do. Shouldn't I be about my destiny? Yes, you should. But not yet. Not fully yet. Because you haven't gotten there yet. And so he's also saying, but shouldn't I be an obedient child of my parents? Yes. There's two yeses here. How do we resolve them? You actually have to hold on to the same tension, I'll say, as you hold on to with the humanity and divinity of Christ. Both presented here. How do I resolve those? I don't. I just have to say yes to both of them. And so it's like yes to growing and yes to being obedient. What that means is different in every moment of life. But it is that sense of not trying to resolve it and just saying, this is how you have to be. You can never change. Or I have to be rebellious and I'm going to be totally different. Sorry, parents. Sorry, Mary, Joseph. It's done. I'm on my way now, and I'm 12. I get to do what I want to do. No, he goes home and is obedient to his parents. But he's not saying, sorry, God, got to be obedient to my parents so I can't grow into the destiny I've got. Now, right now, I'm about to end this. There's a struggle. I bet you right now you're trying to resolve this and say, what's he saying? How do I resolve this? This is a tension. And that very tension is what we want to live in. Because it's in that tension that truth comes out. Is Jesus fully divine? Yes. Okay, good. He's not human. No, he's fully human. Well, he's not divine. I hold both. And I can't resolve it intellectually and rationally. And in that not resolving it, I actually hold the truth. I have to be me, and I have to be who others want me to be. I have to be obedient, and I have to be me. Yes. Want to resolve that? You're kind of uncomfortable. Would you like me to bring a conclusion? That doesn't work. It's some things like this leave us up in the air. I always like to look at this on things like Aesop's fables. Aesop's fables are one of those places where people want to resolve stuff. Aesop never made a moral. But we had to, because we just can't stand the tension right now. But Aesop and other myths and stuff like that were always there to give stories to bring about a paradox that brings growth. Paradox brings growth. And so we go, oh, there's ants and there's grasshoppers, and the ants. And the moral of the story is work hard, and you lose the whole story. You lose the tension of the story. I don't need to hear the story of grasshoppers. Just tell me work hard. Okay, and that's it. You walk away without the tension of, how do I do this? And that's right now what this story of the presentation of the temple leaves us with. It leaves us uncomfortable, but in that discomfort, we begin to understand the rest of the paradoxes of the gospel and of our own personal daily lives. And that's where prayer comes in. Lord, help me in my discomfort, because I have no idea what's next. In the name of the Father, Son,